eat, darling. Oh, how thin you've become. Are the Harrods not feeding you? I'll show them. Fyodor pinched both of his chubby pink cheeks, and his eyes squinted with pleasure. He loved pancakes with sour cream very much. Babushka knew this, and whenever Fyodor came to visit, she made sure to bake a whole heap of golden, fragrant, lacy pancakes for him. She doesn't offend you, does she, that auntie? She only fusses over her own child and neglects you, poor thing. No, she doesn't offend. She's good. Who's good? Oh, you, forgetting your own mother. She's a snake. And she's already wound you around her finger. That nasty cobra. Fyodor, don't be afraid. Tell Grandma, how are things over there? Is your father not hitting you? Not pushing you around? Don't be scared, darling, Grandma won't tell anyone. Though small, Fyodor understands it's best not to argue with Babushka. He agrees with all her complaints, and in return, she feeds him delicious pancakes, gives him candies, and allows him to touch Grandpa's rifle. And overall, Grandma loves and spoils her beloved grandson. Fyodor lives in the city with his dad, Mom Ludmila, and Taya, while Babushka lives with Grandpa in the village. Mom Ludmila is good, and Taya is good too. Taya is Fyodor's sister, but Babushka says Mom Ludmila is bad, and Taya is often called a tomboy. Fyodor still visits Babushka, but as he grows older, he wants to go to the village less and less. He asks why Taya isn't sent to the village, but Dad gives him a stern look, and Fyodor has to go. Babushka eagerly awaits him, bakes delicious pancakes, and constantly asks Fyodor if he's being beaten at home, if they mistreat him there. Fyodor brushes off Babushka's concerns like annoying flies. Before, her husband used to restrain her, but now that he's gone, Babushka has latched onto Fyodor with a death grip, wanting him to visit as often as possible, and she gets upset when Fyodor refuses to entertain her conversations about how bad Mom Ludmila and Dad are. Fyodor doesn't call Ludmila Mom in front of Babushka, he calls her that when they're alone, and Taya calls his dad Dad. They're a normal family, but Babushka shouldn't know that. She gets very angry and fights about it. Mom and Dad explain to Fyodor that Babushka has grown old and bitter. Fyodor wants to ask why he always stays alone with Babushka. He vaguely remembers that he used to live alone with his dad, and there was another woman, and Fyodor even called her Mom, or maybe it was just a dream. That woman from the dream didn't look like Mom Ludmila. Fyodor knew she wasn't his real mom, but he couldn't remember life without her and Taya, and what life would be like without them. Autumn, rain, dampness, Dad and Fyodor drove to the village. Dad was serious, tightly pressed his lips, and frowned at Fyodor. Fyodor stayed silent, thinking about what he had done and why they were going to the village again, especially now, when it wasn't even vacation or a day off. Strangely, there were many unfamiliar people in the Izba. Dad immediately went somewhere, leaving Fyodor in the care of some old woman, not his, a stranger. The stranger pushed him into a closed room, and there lay Grandma, him, Fyodor, stretched out in a new dress she had shown him so many times, calling it her shroud. Why did she put it on him? Grandma, Grandma! Fyodor called out to her, agitatedly. Come, dear, say goodbye to Grandma. Grandma loved you, go to her, darling. Fyodor was curious and scared. He approached quietly. Sat down next to her, bewildered and unsure of what to do. Perhaps Grandma was pretending. She might suddenly get up and fuss around, start baking pancakes, and ask him questions. Grandma, Grandma! Fyodor whispered softly, Granny! And Fyodor quietly began to cry. Who came up with the idea to sit the child next to the deceased? A beautiful woman entered the room, glanced at Fyodor, took his hand, and led him out of the room. Whose child is this, I'm asking? Have you all gone mad here? Suddenly, Dad appeared. He took Fyodor by the hand, said something to the woman, who suddenly froze in the middle of the room, and led him to Aunt Vera, Grandma's neighbor. Then there were the funerals. Dad never left Fyodor's side, as if afraid he would disappear somewhere, and Fyodor noticed that the beautiful woman tried to stay closer to them. In the spring, when Fyodor was finishing second grade, when yellow dandelions were blooming and the air smelled of lilacs, Fyodor waited for Taya by the school. She was now a first grader, and Fyodor, being the elder, was entrusted with carrying the spare key and picking up Taya from school. About 20 minutes passed, and suddenly Fyodor saw a big blue car pull up to the school, and from it emerged the same woman who had taken him from his dead grandma. The woman went into the school, and at that moment, Taya came out of the school doors. Fyodor took her hand, and they walked home. At home, they washed their hands, changed clothes, ate soup from packages, tasty, with a cutlet and pasta, and raspberry jam with tea, and then decided to go for a walk. In the evening, when Mom and Dad came home from work, Mom was cooking dinner, Dad was checking their homework with Taya, when suddenly the doorbell rang. Mom called Dad, Dad went out, closed the door to the room, and told the kids to stay there. Then he peeked into the room and told Fyodor to come out. Fyodor didn't know why he had to come out, and Taya, out of habit, tried to follow, but Dad told her to stay in the room. In the kitchen, Mom sat, eyes downcast, Dad turned red. And in the middle of the kitchen stood that beautiful woman. "Hello, my son, you've grown so big, I'm your mom, don't you remember me? I've come for you, let's get ready." Fyodor didn't understand anything. What mother, get ready for what? Perplexed, he looked at Dad, then shifted his gaze to Mom sitting at the table. "Mom, Dad," Fyodor whispered with dry lips, "I'm not going anywhere from you." No one asked him, Fyodor, anything. Taya was crying, Mom Ludmila was crying, and Dad promised to figure something out. "If only they let you finish school, there's only half a month left," Mom Ludmila said. Fyodor's biological mother shrugged and instructed him to hurry up to her son. They wouldn't take anything with them. They would buy everything new there, in the capital. Fyodor didn't like the capital, maybe he would have liked it if Mom, Dad, and Taya were there with him. Fyodor was driven to school in the blue car. Mom's husband Uncle Mikhail taught Fyodor to play chess, called him Sharp Eye, Chief, and some other names, and Fyodor suspected that he just didn't remember what his name was. In the new school, Fyodor had a hard time, the teacher was mean, and the other kids didn't really accept the newcomer. Mom never checked his homework at all, promised that they would soon move to another country, fed him Fyodor with various treats and delicacies from the store, sang a lot, laughed, talked on the phone, and looked through various magazines. She had so many dresses. Fyodor dreamed that Mom Ludmila had so many dresses too. Fyodor has plenty of toys, but no one to play with. He wishes Taya were here, wonders how Mom and Dad are doing, how Taya is, and Fyodor starts to cry quietly. Now Fyodor cries every day. Mom's husband, Uncle Mikhail, is having trouble with his appointment. Mom screams at him and calls him a loser, shouting about some other man whom Mom sacrificed, if only she knew. That man has long been in England, and Uncle Mikhail is supposed to go to some Bulgaria. Mom cried and screamed. Nobody cared about Fyodor, he had long wanted soup from packages, cutlets with pasta. Mom's delicious soup, and Fyodor started crying again, and then Fyodor got sick and almost stopped eating. Mom started dragging him to some doctors, even to professors. They prescribed various tests, procedures, vitamins, but nothing helped Fyodor. Fyodor was dying, he knew it. Mom, Dad, Taya, Fyodor rambled. "The boy is sick from lack of love," said the old doctor. "He's very homesick, take the child where he's wanted and where he's happy." "What are you saying?" Mom shouted. "I know perfectly well who you are, who my husband is, and where this baby comes from. You probably forgot or didn't understand, sweetheart, I'm a professor." The doctor chuckled. "I'm a child psychiatrist and psychologist. Darling, and I'm telling you, take the child where he's loved, where he's well." "But I love him too," protested Mom. "He's my son, after all." "You, darling, are such a blatant egoist. When the child was a nuisance to you, you left him with his father without a care in the world. And now, when the boy has grown up, you suddenly want to play mother, but you don't know how to be a mother." A mother is not someone who buys outrageously expensive things, toys, feeds delicacies, and takes abroad. A mother simply loves, understands, loves. Oh, yes, I forgot the big factor of your husband's appointment desire to have a child, isn't it? After all, families with children can achieve a good position much faster. They're more reliable, and then you remembered that you already have a ready-made child. It's not true, you're wrong. It's your business, but the boy could perish from longing. He has a very sensitive and impressionable nature, he desperately needs love, care, and a bowl of hot soup. What, are you suggesting that we have nothing? Mother squealed. How dare you, you nasty old man, say such things to me? I've said my piece. Fyodor barely remembered the way, he always felt like sleeping. In his dreams, he was happy again, with Mom Ludmila, Dad, Taya, and somewhere ahead, Grandma loomed, stretching out her dry, wrinkled hands and calling him for pancakes. Fyodor smelled a familiar scent. Fyodor, son, try the broth. Fyodor opened his eyes. It wasn't a dream. Mom Ludmila, Dad, Taya. In the doorway stood the grim-faced mother Svetlana. She wants to approach, but she's afraid. Fyodor knows. He closes his eyes and smiles. Now everything will be fine with them. Fyodor recovered. He was sick for a long time, but he recovered. Mother Svetlana sent packages with gifts for everyone. Sweets for Taya and Fyodor, tools for Dad for household chores, and a beautiful dress for Mom Ludmila, just as Fyodor had dreamed. And Uncle Mikhail was finally appointed to England, and he went there to live with Svetlana. Svetlana.